Former Republican Senator Bob Dole thinks that there is too much money in politics. Interesting. Now, Bob Dole, which was the GOP presidential nominee back in 1996, back in the olden days, had an interview with the AARP, and it was published in the Bulletin. And so he talked about in this interview how campaign spending is getting out of hand. A little late to the party, Bob, but hey, all right. So he wrote in this interview, now they talk about raising $1 billion to run for president. It's unreal. And we need to do something to stop all this money in politics. Well, that's very interesting coming from Bob Dole. Now, he adds in how he said, I've always believed when people give big money, they, maybe silently, expect something in return. Well, no kidding. He would absolutely be right about that. Whether it's the banks giving to Obama in 2008, and then, oh look, lo and behold, they get bailed out by the taxpayer, and then they have massive record profits, and they get a very, very watered down bill called Dodd-Frank that he calls historic banking regulation. Interesting. All from, of course, those donations. And why there were no criminal prosecutions on Wall Street. So no doubt, Bob Dole knows exactly what's going on. Now, Dole is 91 years old. And he doubts that he would have become the Republican presidential nominee if campaign spending were as high then as it is today. Well, there's no doubt that the more money you raise, the better chance you have of actually winning a political office. Makes sense, especially now with Citizens United and McCutcheon. Now, as of the primaries, he said, I don't think I would have won. And he points out something really interesting here. He said, I might not be conservative enough to be the nominee today. There have been huge, huge changes to the Republican Party since 1996. They've basically drove themselves off the cliff. They have gone so far right that Bob Dole is now considered a moderate. That a lot of Republicans now have abandoned the party and have become independents or even been called Democrats. Remember, Charlie Crist. The Republican Party I didn't leave the Republican Party. The Republican Party left me. It's essentially what's going on. They've went so far off the cliff that people that are crazy like fucking Ted Cruz, who's pretty much like that Joe McCarthy. He's almost just like Joe McCarthy. And you also have losers like Alan West. Like, I know so many card-carrying communists of the Democrat Party. Those people are off in crazy land. So of course Bob Dole is right. Even if Ronald Reagan were alive and running as a Republican, dude, they'd call him a socialist. How dare you? How dare you raise taxes 11 times? How dare you? How dare you try to ban assault weapons? Why do you hate freedom, Ronald Reagan? Why? Politics has gone so crazy today. And it takes somebody like Bob Dole to actually point in. Now, I don't know if Bob Dole is actually going to have any effect on the GOP at all by coming out and saying this stuff. But I think Dole's at the point of his life where he don't give a fuck anymore. Hey, you know, if I were 91 years old, I wouldn't give a fuck either. I'd tell it like, well, I already tell it like it is. But if I'd been a politician, you get to a certain point where you don't give a fuck. And you're like, I don't care. I'm going to tell it like it is. And I'm glad he is. Now, when it comes to the money in politics, all right. Now, Hillary Clinton, she brought in $45 million. That breaks the previous record of President Barack Obama, who brought in $42 million during his 2011 re-election campaign. That's amazing. Even on the Republican side, Ben Carson, Dr. Ben Carson, neurosurgeon, who said crazy things about gay people. He brought in $8.3 million. You know, one of the few that haven't raised all this money? Bernie Sanders raised about $8 million from donations no larger than $37. That's what most of his donations. He got over 200,000 people donating to him. Now, old school establishment thinking would say that, well, Bernie Sanders, oh, he's nothing. Look at how little money he raised. And that's, of course, why the news media doesn't really pay much of attention to him, or they continue to write him off. Traditional media, because it's all they care about is how much money you've raised. Now, Hillary Clinton raises $45 million, and everybody's like, oh my God, Hillary Clinton, front runner. And yes, she is leading in the polls right now, to be fair. But Sanders has caught up, is catching up. He's closing the gap and only raised $8 million. So the media, of course, wants to run him off, write him off. Why? Because the newest media, all owned by corporations that stand to get massively rich from ad spending during the election. Now, Hillary Clinton, a lot of that money, that $45 million that's raised, that's going to go in the pockets of media CEOs and personalities. So, of course, they want to write off Bernie Sanders. And, of course, they want to write off anybody who doesn't make that much money. Because money is the only important thing when it comes to running a campaign anymore. At least according to the media. As far as people who call out money in politics like Bob Dole and Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, all the others, and all the others in new independent media that are calling against money in politics, we're the ones who were right and we're on the right side of history. We've got to get rid of this money in politics. And it even took, even 91-year-old Bob Dole can see it. So why can't everybody else? We've got to get the money out of politics. And there are several different ways to do it. There are many different ways to do it. But the best way to do it is through a constitutional amendment to get the 28th Amendment to get money out of politics, overturn Citizens United and McCutcheon, get publicly financed elections, and finally fix our democracy. We can do it, but we need everybody to help. Democrat, Republican, doesn't care. It doesn't matter. I don't care. If you believe in America, if you believe the best candidate should win on the best ideas and not be able to buy their way into office, then support the drive to get money out of politics. It's the only way we're going to win on anything.